Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fearless and Free TV on this beautiful, fabulous, fearless Friday. I am super excited to share with you a guest this morning, Cali Gilbert. Cali's been a longtime friend of mine, probably, I want to say about 10 years. Cali and I met through a program called Transformational Author Experience. And that program kind of helped us both birth our first books. And we've kept in touch ever since then. So I'm really excited to share Cali with you. Also, Cali and I worked on a film project together a couple of years ago, so we might talk about that a little bit too. Since meeting, Cali's become a best-selling author of numerous books, and she's also become an award-winning filmmaker. So I'm really excited to share her with you this morning and what she's been up to in the world and some new projects that she's working on. So please welcome my good friend, Cali Gilbert. I'm so happy to see you this morning, Cali.
Likewise, so happy we were able to connect.
Yeah, so we haven't seen each other since before, obviously before COVID.
Yeah.
And the last time we saw each other, we were working on this film project for Pearl.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot has happened since then. It's been interesting to kind of see the direction that it's taken, and really now the new direction for Pearl, which I'm excited to share.
Ooh, I'm excited because we ended up having to didn't really scrap it, but we kind of tabled it for a while. And then you ended up creating a smaller film based on that same concept. So would you tell me a little bit about, or tell the audience a little bit about that.
So
that ended up being amazing.
Yeah, I had put together I launched my production company in 2019, Tower 15 Productions, and was really excited, wanted to get this project off the ground. Had developed what I was hoping would be a feature-length documentary entitled Pearl, had put together an amazing all-female cast and crew, and then set out to raise money so that we could make the film. And it was a long process. We took almost about a year trying to raise money for this film, and nothing was happening. And it was frustrating because I knew that we had an important story to tell. The story was going to be about 6 women who had experienced homelessness and then found success in the arts and their transformational journeys. And so it was frustrating. And I knew that by September of 2019, I had basically put all of my money into this project and everything I had, and was running out of money, and thought, okay, well, maybe I should look for a job. And I still wanted to tell that story. And I ended up at a point where I was one day trying to get to a job fair across town. I was living in Santa Monica at the time and trying to get to Culver City. Don't have a car. Was like, I got to get to Culver City. I literally didn't have enough funds to get the bus to Culver City. And I thought, this is nuts. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to do what I think I'm supposed to be doing, and it's not happening. And then I kind of paused and I took a step back and I said, wait a second, take a moment to look at this differently, change my mindset. And in that moment, I thought, what is it that I can do with what I currently have? And so I looked down, I said, well, I have a cell phone, and I have skills, and I have talents, and I know people, and I can reach out to some people that work within the homeless community, supporting the homeless community. I can reach out to friends that are musicians and composers, and together we can make this film. And I ended up, over the course of 6 weeks, from the idea coming to me to the end product, creating a short film entitled Invisible, which was basically going to be used as a proof of concept. That was the initial concept when I first thought of it, towards Pearl. It's like, let me show you what I can do, and then hopefully we can bring some attention to Pearl. And 15-minute short film, I shot it, I interviewed people, I edited, I did everything with it. Had some friends donate some music to it, and then we started submitting it to film festivals. And it started winning at the beginning of 2020, which was mind-blowing because I thought, well, I didn't expect that at all. And the first 2 months of 2020 were probably like the best of my life. It was incredible. The film starts winning awards. We found out that we were going to have the official LA premiere at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, which was huge, huge, huge. And then literally the day after Oscar Sunday, I received an email that my accreditation as a filmmaker had been accepted by the Cannes Film Festival in France. And at that point, I was just like on the moon, right?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just a bit amazing. I mean, 2020 was probably one of the best years of my life, just because that film took off in ways I hadn't anticipated. It won several awards the year that it spent on the festival circuit. So much wonderful attention. And we were able to support the nonprofits that we featured in the film throughout that process as well.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun watching that process. Because
yeah, and I think what was also a blessing was that it really shifted the direction of Pearl. So, and I think that's probably why that project came into my life, because it's like, this is a good idea, but it's got to be a slightly different, direction. And so what I'm looking to do with Pearl now is create a documentary series.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, in featuring women who are homeless or on the brink of homelessness or have experienced homelessness, and showing them how to start their own businesses, mostly creative women, because it was women in the arts was the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And really doing like a series of one woman at a time, and kind of, expanding that over time and seeing where that goes. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the insights that I was getting several years ago. What I find fascinating, what's happening in 2021, are all these ideas that Spirit was giving to us, in the last 10 years. They're all beginning to culminate this year. And I remember seeing it. I think we even talked about different kinds of documentary like ideas, and how can we take what I call better stories worth telling. Actually, I need to brand that, because it's what Spirit has guided me to call it. How can we take these better stories worth telling and turn them into series, and turn them into how can we use this series idea where people can say, I can't wait to see what happens on the next one.
Exactly.
And create these stories in a way that they are just as tantalizing as the fiction ones that people are watching right now.
Right. Absolutely.
I love that you got this. You got the memo.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing was, though, it was fascinating too, because 2019 was also a very crucial year. I turned 49, and I remember on my birthday very vividly waking up, and it was almost as if a source gave me a preview of my life ahead, and basically showed me how I was to make a difference in the lives of women in a much bigger way than I had originally envisioned doing so. And I was just like, wow. And it was almost frightening, because it was so big, yet it was exhilarating at the same time. And so now, having, experienced making the film Invisible, seeing what I could do with that, seeing the result, the response from viewers, and then also coming to that new direction with Pearl, it has led me to now really be fulfilling what I consider probably one of my biggest dreams, and that is starting my own nonprofit, which I'm in the process of doing right now. And it is to support creative women in transition in starting their own business via entrepreneurship, mentoring, and training. And I feel so in alignment right now. I can't even tell you the feeling, because it's flowing. Everything is just flowing so naturally. And it's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I love that. And what that to me is a confirmation of that's what it looks like when we are on path.
Yes, absolutely.
And that when we are doing the work that our soul's work, that we're on path, it just comes together with grace and ease. And we talk about grace and ease.
Yeah.
And that when we're trying to do something that's not in perfect alignment with what we're here to do, it's work.
Right.
And that when we're doing the work that we're here to do, it just shows up.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The people, the resources, everything that we need just shows up right in the path. Don't even have to hunt it down. And but the difference is that when it shows up, we talk about the law of attraction. I always tell people that half of the word attraction is action, but it doesn't have to be big action. It just, when it shows up in the path, actually acting upon it when it shows
Exactly.
up.
Absolutely.
And that as we act upon it when it shows up, the universe says, oh, look, and then gives you more to act upon.
Right.
So you're like the perfect example of what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just trusting the path that you know resonates with your soul.
Exactly. And like you said, it's about taking that inspired action when those things show up, right? I mean, you could look at it and go, okay, that's nice, and then don't do anything about it, right? But it's continuing to move forward, even if it's baby steps, right? Because you're moving forward. And that's why I'm a huge believer in when anything shows up, it's okay, how can I move forward? What can I do to move forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and recognizing, because sometimes things come into the path that aren't perfectly aligned. Sometimes they're distractions, right?
Exactly.
So sometimes it's when things come into our path of being able to recognize, is this in alignment or is this a distraction?
Right.
And being able to decipher the difference. And what I've seen watching you the last couple of years is being able to really get clear on, this is the direction I'm going, and recognizing those alignments when they show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been really fun to watch that process.
Yeah.
So do you know yet what the name of your nonprofit is? You're still working on that?
It's gonna be the same as my business. So basically, when I launched my production company, so it'll be Tower 15 Productions. When I launched it just as a sole entrepreneurship to start off, because I thought I'm not really going to do anything in that first year, just get things started. And then, but I always knew that it would be a nonprofit eventually, because all of my work that I do throughout my company has a social impact.
Got it.
All goes to benefit nonprofit organizations and different causes. So, yeah.
Okay. And this one specifically is for women, basically, I don't like to use the term, I guess, homeless women. There are so many of them, and that number has actually been growing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
And creative, specifically creative women, because I think that's the thing too, is that if a woman has creative gift, I believe we all have gifts, right? We all have gifts and talents that we're blessed with. And I believe not being able to share them with the world, it almost feels, well, personally, I know how it feels, is it's almost like a slow death of your soul, right?
Absolutely.
When you have these gifts, you have, so much that you want to offer, and you're not able to, or you just don't know how to, right? And so that's why I want to really support women who have these gifts, these creative gifts, and say, look, you've got these beautiful gifts, you want to share them with the world. You're not quite sure how to do it. I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm going to bring other women, other entrepreneurs together so that we can all lift each other up. That's the main thing.
Right. That is really beautiful. Yeah. Now, I have a friend of mine that's a therapist, and she said to me a couple of years ago that depression is the opposite of expression. So the reason a lot of people are depressed is because they're not able to express themselves, which I know is especially frustrating for artists, for creatives, because that's how we express ourselves. That's
absolutely.
And when we're not able to express that creative gift, our own creative genius, that's when depression sets in. Absolutely. So that's where I think it actually feels like it's at the slow death inside when we're not able to creatively express ourselves. So I love that you're doing that. It's really spectacular. Yeah. So when you have that together, I'd love to support that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
right now we'll have a longer conversation on. Right now, I'm building the team behind it. So we'll definitely talk about that.
Ooh, I love your hat, by the way.
Oh yes.
That's cute. Where can I get one?
I'll tell you that as well. Yeah, I have a fun story about this hat. So when I first started out in film, I bought a director's hat, and I wore that thing everywhere. And I remember, living in LA, I remember one day I went to like an office supply store to make some copies and buy some things. And there was a man there, and he kind of looked at me and he goes, "Another director, would you imagine that?" Or something very sarcastic, right? Yeah. And I remember like really being ticked off, and then I thought, well, yes, I am, right? I wasn't at that time, but I was like, yes, I am, right? And I wore that hat everywhere. And I knew that one day I would be a director. And now I can say I'm an award-winning director, right? And so once I accomplished that, it was like, okay, time to switch up the hats. And now it's like, this one's just perfect.
I love that hat. And, and that's really, that hat is really the story of your life, because you've had some real ups and downs, and you just keep pushing through.
Keep going. Keep going. I feel like I'm just getting started, although I do feel like I've lived about 9 or 10 lifetimes just this time around, right?
Right. Well, I know a little bit about your past life story, so in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then when we were talking a couple of days ago, you said there's another project that you're working on, which is
So
that is.
yeah, basically, you mentioned it. You mentioned the words actually earlier, and the creative genius, right?
Mm.
So I feel that over my years of transformation, especially the last decade, one of the greatest gifts that I learned was the ability to tap into my own creative genius. And I call it the inner muse, right? I believe that, you hear stories, there's actually movies about the muse, right? You look outside of yourself to find that person that's going to support you and kind of guide you to create whatever it is that you're supposed to create. But the truth is that the muse lies within us, right? Each of us has that creative genius. And learning how to tap into that space is amazing. And I was able to go to a workshop about 6 years ago now, where I learned how to do that. And it just took my writing to an entirely new level. And then I started applying it to different creative areas of my life. And it really just amazing how I now will get downloads for my writing books, for my creative projects, for everything. And it's inside of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now what I want to do is pay it forward and teach others how to do that as well, how to learn to tap into that space. So I have created a program based on my latest book entitled Perception, which I released in November, called The Journey Towards Perception. And it's really learning how to create the life of your dreams using, what's already inside of yourself, right? And really being able to take simple steps that you can apply to your life, to your daily routine, that will help you in creating that ideal life.
Fantastic. Yeah, I want to say something really quick about the muse too. So before I wrote my first book, I went to a writer's conference. And I remember sitting in this room with all these women, and the instructor said, "Now I want you all to go outside and connect with your inner critic." And I'd never heard the term inner critic before. I didn't even know there was such a thing. She said, "Well, I want you to go outside and have a connection with your inner critic and ask your inner critic what's stopping you from writing your book." So I went outside and I sat down with this plan to communicate with my inner critic. And I was like, "Okay, inner critic, talk to me." Well, what was fascinating is that the voice that came through was not my inner critic. This is when I first realized that there was a voice actually inside of me. I didn't even know this was a thing. And the voice that came through said, "I'm not your inner critic. I'm your inner muse.
Yeah.
And if you will sit with me, I will help you write." And it was, don't worry about the housework. Stop cleaning the dishes. Don't worry about the laundry. Just sit with me a little bit every day and I will help you write. And what was fascinating about that, from that moment forward, it was like turning on a tap, because I allowed myself to connect with the inner muse instead of the inner critic. And that tap has never turned back off again. Like you said, it's like channeling. It just comes, and it's like turning on a tap, and it's constantly flowing. So
it's amazing.
be able to teach people how to do that. Thank you so much for that service to humanity, because that is so incredibly needed, to know how to communicate with the inner muse and put that to creative use. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's been fascinating to see, since I learned how to do that. Just she comes to me at her wonder hour, which is like 3:30 in the morning, is her favorite time. And with just this abundance of genius, and I'll wake up and I'll just be like, "Oh my gosh, okay, what's she gonna bring to me today?" And it's fascinating. I've written 2 books from literally those downloads in the middle of the
Mm.
night, where the first time was, that publishing book you were thinking of doing a few years ago, now's the time to do it. And I remember at the time I had so much going on and I'm thinking, nah, no time. Sorry, can't do it. And the very next night she came back and she said, and this is exactly what it looks like, and laid the entire thing out for me. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to give it to me, I guess I'll do it. And 30 days later, it was on the market and #1 international bestseller. And it was just like, wow, right? So yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
powerful. It really is.
Yeah, and I've noticed that about you, how, because we've had this conversation before over the years, how the idea comes in and you don't piddle around with it for a year or two like other people do. It's like the idea comes in and you do it and it's done. That was like your filmmaker book, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
had the
Filmmaking
idea,
book,
you
exactly.
gathered up all the resources and you published the book and it became a
Exactly.
bestseller.
Yeah.
They-
Yeah.
So how many books do you have now?
I have 10.
Wow.
Yeah. Perception was the 10th. And Perception, same thing. I had originally, it was the 3rd book of my memoir series, had originally planned to release it in 2018. Started writing it, did not feel right, like you were saying, when it's not, in alignment, it doesn't flow. I shelved it and I thought, all right, when it's ready, it'll come to me. Around that time of 19 and my birthday, I heard Perception is 2020 and went, okay,
Mm,
we'll
this
do
time.
it. And it was perfect because I completely restructured it, had the introduction be a continuation of the prior books. And then the rest of it was basically how I made 2020 one of the best years of my life, and how anyone can create success and fulfillment regardless of circumstance. And that was the whole thing about, we had the most unpredictable year of our lives, but yet I was able to find success because I was able to create that structure from the very beginning. So that's what
Mm,
I teach now.
that is fantastic. So, what kind of program is it? Is it a
It's
series?
a 8-week program. It's 8 video modules and instruction. There's a workbook and action guide, and then we have a private Facebook group so that I'm there answering questions, supporting everyone on the journey, and it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so rather than it being like a live Zoom conference kind of thing,
Yeah.
it's all pre-recorded.
It's all video. It's all
Although you're there to help with the process. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where can people learn more about that?
On my website, caligilbert.com. Everything is on that front page. Best way to check me out, all the work that I'm doing. I wear many hats besides writer and filmmaker, so that's the best place to look.
Awesome. So we still have plenty of time to talk. What else should we talk about?
Yeah.
Oh, let's, this is one of the things that I am a huge advocate of, which is why I want to coin the term better stories worth telling. I really need to trademark that, is that every person has a story that can help everyone else rise up out of their own stories. So I would love you to share with the audience a little bit. I mean, I know that you talk about your story in your various books. But I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about your story, like what happened. But before you and I met at the Transformational Author Experience, which I think is
absolutely.
And yeah, who you are, where you came from, and how you got to be where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like I've lived about 9 lifetimes just this time around because I've done so much in this life. I'm a former athlete. I'm a former figure skater. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. I traveled all over the world. I created a magazine when I was in my teens. I had my first press pass when I was 19, covering the World Figure Skating Championships. I loved everything about it. When I was a child, 12 years old, my best friend was a professional athlete. So I ended up in Sports Illustrated when I was 13. So I had like this crazy, unpredictable life just growing up. I was a public figure from a very young age. And then I went to New York. I kind of did things backwards. So after I finished skating, I went into publishing, started my magazine, did that for a while, and then decided to go back to school because at the time I first went to school, I had no desire to be there. I was just like, this isn't for me. I have no clue. I just want to skate. And so I went back to school, got 3 degrees in 6 years, and majored in sport management, basically an MBA with a sport focus. So all the business classes, the marketing classes, everything. And then somehow I had been going back and forth from New York to San Francisco, and I had met a man in San Francisco and had fallen in love with the Bay Area, especially Sausalito. Sausalito to me kind of called me as an artist. And what was really interesting was that I grew up with this incredible life, but yet I felt like I was living someone else's dream. I wasn't really answering my own soul's calling. And so when I decided to leave New York and give up the ideal life that everyone thought I had lived and follow my heart and my soul to San Francisco, that's kind of where things shifted. I went to grad school in San Francisco. That's where I got a master's in sport management, started my own event management consulting firm halfway through grad school and thought, this is the direction I'm going to go. And then the universe, God, source, whatever it is that you want to call, it said, yeah, let's just kind of, it's that whole alignment thing again, right?
Mhm.
And in 2011, I ended up losing everything. I miscarried a child, my car died, my money ran out, the relationship ended, and I lost my home, all in the span of 12 months. So I began 2012 with no home, no money, nothing, out on the street in Sausalito going, how did this happen?
Mhm. You froze. Cali, you froze.
I was going to say, there we go. We're back.
That was fascinating. You froze right at, how did this happen?
Right. We both froze.
That was fascinating.
Yeah. But I look back on it now, right, and think, what a gift. I ended up spending 12 months homeless in the Bay Area, and because I wasn't in alignment, I was still trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do, and when that wasn't happening, I thought, I'm just going to do what I love to do, which is the writing and the photography and really embracing the role of an artist. And the moment I shifted gears and went in that direction, it was like everything in my life shifted. I ended up moving to LA. I came to LA in 2013. I had published my 5th book by that point, the first book in my memoir series. And the moment I said, I think I'll stay in Santa Monica, which is where I landed, everything came into alignment. I met Elizabeth Gilbert. I'll never forget that day, of our famous Eat, Pray, Love. And we were instant kindred soul sisters. And then the next day I met my partner, who is a remarkable man who has really, from day one was there supporting me, loving me, encouraging me to, follow my dreams, to try new things, to really, just live this life that I wanted to create on my own terms. And we ended up publishing a book together, and now, 10 books later and a production company, and now I'm finally in alignment, So yeah, it's been quite the journey. But I look back at it as such a gift, because it taught me lessons that, were so important and necessary, and really made me who I am today.
Yeah, and it also kind of gave you like a greater purpose.
Yes,
Beyond just
absolutely.
your own, but then also understanding what it is to be a creative woman stuck in homelessness.
Right.
And that I know that has drawn to your heart for as long as I know you. It's kind of like we have the purpose of that we're here, our higher purpose, and then there's a humanitarian project that I feel we all have tugging at us, and it's almost that. If I had all the money in the world, what would I support?
Exactly.
And for you, I've sensed for a while, it is that creative homeless woman. Like how how can we support these women who have so much to give in the world and aren't being given that opportunity?
Exactly.
And so what I'm seeing, one, from that homeless experience that you had, it helped you find out more of who you are and the path that you really are intended to take in this lifetime. And also then what that greater service is that you're meant to serve on behalf of humanity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's fascinating when we look back at those times in our lives that look like the worst possible times, how when we look at them with a different perspective, which I know is part of what you're teaching, if I recall, it had something to do with perspective, right? Looking back at those really difficult times in life with a completely fresh perspective changes the experience entirely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so simple. I mean, it's that just quick shift of mindset, right? That can change everything, and that was the thing. I mean, that was 2020 for me. I had been going through the first 2 months on this massive high, and then everything stopped, right? And I could have said, oh crap, well, I'll just go hide under a rock until this is over. Or, I can plant seeds and keep working and keep doing my thing. And when we come out the other side, I'll be ready to go. And that's exactly what I did. And that was a choice, right? I truly believe that we may not have a choice of what happens around us, a global pandemic, for example, but we always, always have a choice on how we react to it and how we respond to it. Always, right? And it's just making that decision.
Yeah, and how we look at it. So, I mean, I know I hear people complain sometimes about how we don't really have choice. Like, so I talk all the time about how the prime directive on our planet is free choice. So I hear a lot of people complain about how we don't really have choices. Ultimately, though, we do.
We do.
Because the choice that matters most is our choice of perception.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I know we titled this show something about perception. That is what you had sent me in the Facebook link. So tell me a little bit about that. Why did we call this show that? Is that the name?
So well, I believe in terms of perception, first of all, I view perception as, we all come into this world and we are programmed basically from birth, from the womb, right? It's where it really starts, through the early years, so that by the time we reach adulthood, we have all of this programming, everything that we're taught from our parents, from society, from media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So if something happens to, say, you and I, right, the exact same thing can happen to us, but we can view it with completely different perceptions because of our past, right? So the understanding is that the perception is a filter, basically, of how we view life, right? And what I believe most people don't realize is that we have a choice to change that filter, right? It's basically the old story which we were told growing up, and we have the ability to create a new story. And when you realize that was huge for me, because I was always going, well, I'm this way because I had major abandonment issues, because, my parents did this, because this is, what it was like growing up, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm thinking, but that's just a story I made up, right? Now I get to change that, and I get to create a new story, right? My parents were doing the best they could with what they had, right? They were trying to protect me. As a child, I didn't understand that, right? And so really, when you just look at it from a different lens, it changes that story, right? And that's what it's so simple, yet it's very difficult until you fully start to, put in the time to understand it.
Yeah, and it completely changes everything, because
we all have everything.
We all have a story. We all have stories. And it's how we choose to look at the story and what part of the story we focus on. So rather than going through life from a victim mentality of this, and I had somebody ask me yesterday if this victim mentality is a new thing. And I said, no, I remember being in college and taking classes and learning about the blame game. And that as long as we blame our past and hold ourselves in victim to the past, we don't progress.
Right.
We have to be willing to go back and look at the past story and extract all of as a friend of mine says, the best gems are in the shit.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So being
Yeah.
willing to go back and look at the whole story from a completely different perspective, and being able to juice
Exactly.
our life for the
Exactly.
best stuff, because the
Yeah.
stuff that's in there is really good. If we're
And
willing,
it's interesting. I have the best example in terms of that from my homeless experience. So the first time I was homeless for a total of 4 months, end of 11 to beginning of spring of 12. And in that situation, I was victim because I was like, how is this happening, right? Total survival mode, total, like despair, right? Every lower emotion you could possibly feel, okay? The second time around, so then I manifested this amazing new home, this new job, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it was like, I then suffered a severe back injury at the end of 2012. Ended up losing the job, losing the home, back on the street. Okay. And at first I thought, seriously? Didn't we already do this before, right? But what I did was I changed my mindset because I thought, you know what? Been here before, didn't die. No, I'm going to be okay. So instead of looking at it from victim survival, oh my God, poor me mentality, I'm going to look at it from I'm on an adventure and where is life going to take me this week? Because when you're homeless, you can't plan anything, right? So a week at a time, right? Where's life going to take me this week? And I lived like that for 8 months. And it was fascinating to see how everything shifted. People I hadn't seen in years were coming into my life. This one woman who was from Sausalito, her mother had died and they were selling the family home. And she's like, we sold the home. It's in escrow for a month. Why don't you just stay at the house? Okay. Had another friend, a literary agent. We're going to Europe for 6 weeks. Why don't you house sit my home in San Francisco? And this was back to back to back to back for 8 months because I shifted that mindset.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And
how
that,
it works.
yeah, exactly. And so you shifted the mindset into it being an adventure, and then there was an element of trust as well. Just
Right.
somehow you trusted things would work out. And that's reminding me of a time when I was younger, because as you know, I experienced some homelessness as well, which is why we ended up working on Pearl together. And it was that same kind of thing that somehow I asked my son not to go in and out of the garage. So for anyone that's wondering who that voice was in the background, I turned my garage into a family room. So my kids hang out there and it's cool. But I have a very bossy door that tells me what people are coming in and out of my house. So anyway, I went through that homelessness phase too. And it was that same kind of thing that I fortunately I had a car, but I didn't have to go very long between places to hang because there were people offered me their couch to stay on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to sleep in my car for more than a week or so at a time because other things would show up and people would just show up in my life to help me out. And I trusted that. And I don't even know how I knew that, but almost like I had an intuitive guidance that knew that things would be okay. And I think because I had that intuitive guidance that I knew things would be okay, that's the reason that they were. Like with you, there was that just trusting that it's okay. We'll just, what's next? What's the next the adventure?
Exactly.
And I had that same kind of mentality. It was, so one of my quotes for a big part of my life has been, life is an adventure, enjoy the ride. So yeah, it's a roller coaster, but enjoy it like you would a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
So, and I think because you were able to look at it from that positive perspective rather than the poor me victim mentality, you were able to just pick yourself back up again and make those transitions much less difficult than they could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nowadays, if anything negative happens nowadays, piece of cake, you know?
It's like, been there, done that. Okay, what's
Right,
next?
exactly.
Yeah, because I found that when I was going through that victim blame, because you know how I grew up, and I did have that blame thing for a while, and then once I realized that playing the victim and playing blame was incredibly disempowering.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I let go of blaming other people for my circumstances and blaming my past for the reason I was the way that I was, and you know, I went through some severe depression because of some childhood experiences. But I realized that once I stopped blaming my past and blaming my story, and I took full responsibility of my own choices and the way I perceive life, life became fantastic. And it wasn't that I became fantastic and that I had everything. It became fantastic internally.
Yes, absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
interesting too, because also that shift then brings the right people into your life and the right situations into your life, right? I had
Right.
left Sausalito with this very toxic relationship that was so disempowering and so emotionally abusive, and arrived in LA to connect with this man who was the complete opposite, right? Because I
Mhm.
had to that point been doing so much of the inner work that I was in a place of self-love when we met. And it was incredible because so encouraging, so supportive. But when I would go to thank him, he would be like, well, I was here, but you're the one that did the work,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so he knew, you know, that I needed to be able to do the work and stand on my own 2 feet. And he would always be there to support me, but from a distance, right? So it was
Right.
fascinating to see the difference between those two relationships.
Yeah. And you were able to attract that new relationship because of who you had become before meeting him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and that, I think that's really important for people to understand that that's, you know, when we talk about attraction again, it is about attracting into our lives the vibration that we already are.
Right. Exactly.
So the universe matches at the energy that we vibrate at.
Yeah.
And so you could have stayed in victim mentality and you could still be there, but instead you
Exactly.
chose not to.
Right.
And I love that you are now teaching other people how to move out of that and really take ownership of their own lives. Because as long as we're blaming anybody else for our circumstances, we're not in control of our own life. We're,
Exactly.
we're basically giving other people control of our reality and
Exactly.
other people control of our life and other people control of our emotions. So, and I know a huge part of that is forgiveness, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm a big proponent of forgiveness, and a big part of it is
Absolutely.
self-forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like I look back at that toxic relationship and I say, thank you know, thank you for coming into my life for that time because it taught me how to, you know, that importance of self-love and that I did deserve better and that I knew that I was worth more than what that was bringing out, right? And so yeah, and it's like what a beautiful gift, you know. It was hell at the time, right? But what a
Right.
beautiful gift.
Right. And so you needed, and I know we've talked about this before, you needed to experience the contrast.
Right.
And that the contrast isn't very fun when we're in it. But then being able to look back at it once we get past the other side of being incredibly grateful for the contrast.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people get stuck. So the two things that I think have changed my life the most are gratitude and forgiveness. I like that's part of my daily mantra. What can I be grateful for, and what else do I need to forgive? And that so a lot of people, when they think about gratitude, they think about gratitude from the perspective of I am grateful for blah blah blah, whatever good thing is in their life right now. When gratitude really goes to work, it's learning how to be grateful for the not so good stuff.
Yes.
As you said,
Absolutely.
learning how to be
Yes.
grateful for the contrast, learning how to be grateful for the dark times in our lives.
Yeah.
And that when people really grasp how to be grateful for the not good stuff, that radically shifts
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So thank you for sharing that, because I think for me, I talk about one of the things that I teach is this transcendence process, and gratitude and forgiveness are two parts of that, because those two things will shift your life faster than anything else. Yeah. And liberate you. This is now talking to the audience. Liberate you from attachments to the past, because what I have found is that a tremendous part of our own suffering comes from our attachments to how we think things should have been and how we think things should be. So, and you've probably heard this before: never should on yourself and don't should on other people.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
shoulds, that's very draining, and that actually keeps us stuck in the darkness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
letting go.
part of the course that I'm teaching, the journey towards perception, I teach a 4-step manifesting process. And the last step is releasing the attachment to the outcome, right?
Yeah.
Because we get so fixed on how we want something to happen or how something is supposed to show up in our lives that we don't allow for something better to show up, right? And I've had things in my life show up that were so far better or more than I could have ever anticipated,
Right.
because I released that attachment, right?
Right.
Huge, right?
Yeah, and I see people do that. So when it comes to prosperity, for example, they're attached on where they think the money has to come from. So they're setting rockets of desire up to the universe that says, I want money to come through this stream. When the universe could be saying, yeah, but there's 10 other streams I could send it to.
Exactly.
So we have to be willing to accept, to, like you said, not be so attached to where we think our stream has to come from. As long as we stay aligned on the path that resonates with our soul, that resonates with our spirit, we can receive from the entire ocean of possibilities rather than the one stream it has to come through.
Yeah, I recently shared that with one of my women's groups. So I'm a storyteller, as you know, and I created an intention towards the end of last year, and it says, it's very simple. I write it down every day. It says, I easily receive a 6-figure annual income as a storyteller. And that can be in various forms: publishing books, making films, supporting clients, speaking. So, like you said, the ocean of possibility, right? But because I just said, as a storyteller, then I allow for whatever to come in to do so, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So when I teach the intention writing, right, I say, write it down as specific as you can. However, make sure to leave space for more to come.
Right. Yeah, I call that receiving your allowance. So,
yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Ultimately, that's it. We just allow the universe to give to us from wherever it comes. And there was something else that you said that I can't think of what it was now, but it was something brilliant that you said a few minutes ago. I guess they get the general idea. Oh, it was, there was part of that stream where, that's what it was. This or something even better.
Yes.
So I use that term a lot. It's like, I would like to receive this or something even better. So when we don't limit what comes, because some people put a limit. It's like, I want to publish my book with such and such publisher, for example. Well, what if something even better? So I think it's really important as we set these intentions to open that up, to receive from the ocean of possibilities this and something even better. So I know that's part of what you teach. I'm putting that out to the audience. That to not, one, don't shoot on yourself. Two, don't limit yourself of where the possibilities can come from, because it's the possibilities are infinite.
Oh my God, yeah. And the thing too is that, so in June of last year, I moved into my forever home at the beach. And
I want to hear about that, because the last time
this is like perfect example of this or something better. Okay. So probably 20 years ago, I set this intention, and I knew nothing about setting intentions back then. I just said, I would love to have a home of my own by the sea by the time I turn 50. That was it. put it out there. Didn't even think about what it is to put it out there. Okay. Not even on my radar at that point. Right.
Right.
Just put it out there. And then last year I was living in Santa Monica, loved where I lived. I was beautiful neighborhood, great roommates, wonderful. I mean, I loved exactly where I lived. I could have stayed there forever. Okay. But the universe knew that this was my intention, right? And so it was fascinating because in January of 2020, my roommate that I adore and have known for years got another roommate to come into our place. And this roommate wreaked toxicity like you would not believe. Okay. It was so bad that I literally felt ill being in the same space as this person.
Wow.
Yeah, very bad. And I was just like, oh my God. And I just kept telling myself, it's temporary, he'll be gone and we'll get on with my life, right? And then of course COVID hit. And now we're all together, right? And I'm thinking, I'm gonna like really get sick if I'm around this person much longer. And so I thought, well, I got to get out of here. You know, no idea where I was going to go, but I'm like, I got to get out of here. Decided to go visit my parents and look after them for a month while I looked for a new place. Thought I had found a place in Santa Monica in our same neighborhood, but it was like a little guest house place. And it was a couple blocks from the beach and it was perfect. And I applied for it, got approved for it. Thought, all right, perfect. I'm going to go there. And then it fell through. And as something, I can't even tell you what, intuitively said, look in San Diego, look in, North County, San Diego. You love that area. It's still close to Santa Monica. You can be, come back and forth. And so I did and found this place. And I remember there was a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom available. And I thought, well, I want a place of my own, but I want space, right? Because I want to be able to, who knows how much longer we're going to be working from home. I already work from home, but I want to have my own space. I want to be able to grow into it. So I applied for it. And it was amazing to see how everything kind of just, fell into place. And I ended up getting this place sight unseen, right? And I remember walking in and was like, are you freaking kidding me? I mean, it's massive. Okay. I'm like, I can walk to the beach in 5 minutes. Okay. I mean, literally out my door on the sand in 5 minutes. And I literally wake up every day and say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because it's so much more than I could have ever anticipated. And I think though, I remember it clearly, probably about 2 weeks into living here, I was like, damn, I manifested this. Imagine what else I can manifest.
Yeah.
Right? It took my confidence level to a whole new level, right? It was like, this was like the biggest thing I had ever manifested. I'm paying twice as much what I'm paying in Santa Monica, but I am happier than I've ever been, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what next, right? Like, now let's just go for those big goals. And that's why I'm like, well, I'm just going to do the nonprofit because that's been on the bucket list for a long time.
Right.
So, yeah. And that's the thing. It's when you allow, the space for something better to come, look out because it's going to come. It's pretty spectacular to see it happen.
Yeah. And I remember talking to you when you're trying to decide between those two places. And then you were very heartbroken to leave Santa Monica because you loved Santa Monica so much.
Yeah.
And then you decided on this place. But I think the last time we talked about the place, you hadn't actually moved into it yet. You're like, okay, I got the place. It's in Oceanside, right? Is that where it is?
The one in Carlsbad.
Carlsbad. Yeah. I tend to get the two confused because they're, right next to each other.
Yeah.
So, but I remember you saying that you got that house, but you hadn't actually moved into it yet. That is a fantastic story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was just like, seriously? And I mean, there's still days when I walk around and I'm just like, this is just nuts. And
then what happened after that? Because what I saw happen after that is that's when all the things started happening with your film project.
Yeah.
That it was just kind of, ooh, I manifested this, now what? And then the windows opened up for you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Incredible. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
and the funniest thing was is that the intention 20 years ago was by the time I turned 50.
Yeah.
I moved in June and I turned 50 in November.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. Well, I kind of did something that's, and that's the amazing thing about intentions. So sometimes people set intentions and then they put conditions on how it arrives, as we've said before. But sometimes it's those intentions that we set with zero attachments of any kind that just manifest.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely forgot about it until, I was in the place and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. I remember that.
I did that same thing with my first book. I completely forgot. So in the early 80s, 1987, when I had my first round of spiritual awakening, that's when I discovered self-help books and people like Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay. And I was reading all these self-help books, and I had said to myself, I was about 21 years old, someday I want to write a book that helps other people the way these people have helped me. That's all I said. And I completely, like you, I completely forgot about it. Well, one day, a couple of years ago, obviously before Wayne Dyer died, I was at an event and he was speaking, and I remembered that. I was like, oh my gosh.
I did it.
I said I was going to write a book that would help people the way he had helped me so many years earlier. But the funny thing is, it was about a year after I had published my book.
Yeah.
Like you, I'd completely forgotten.
Yeah.
But that's how powerful intentions are.
It is. One story that I share often, it's funny, when I was a teenager, this would have been early teens, I used to watch the TV show Murder, She Wrote with my grandmother. And I loved that show. And I remember watching it thinking, wow, how cool would that be to live in this little Bayside community, to ride your bike everywhere, to know everyone, and to just write books, right? And then 30 years later, I actually manifested it, living in Sausalito, riding my bike everywhere and publishing books, right? And I'm like, holy crap, I did it, right?
Yeah.
Didn't even think about it, right? Because here I am, a teenager going, wouldn't that be cool, right? Note to universe. Yes.
Yeah, and you didn't even have to try. That's the thing
I didn't even have to try.
About teaching people, that it doesn't have to be hard work.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing that the last couple of months. There's so many people coming back into my life that I've connected with over the years, like you. It's a couple of times a day that I get phone calls or emails from people that I have over the years connected with. Once I set the intention to start this Fearless and Free TV, the people are just showing up in my life without even trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing how, when you set an intention, how easily things just show up. Yeah. So before we go, I want you to tell everyone again, the name of your program, how to find you, and a little bit of that before we head out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the name of the program is Journey Towards Perception. It is 8 weeks. It starts next Wednesday, the 24th. All the information is on my website, and looking forward to supporting, everyone on this journey. We do live in unpredictable times now, but we can create amazing things by really tapping into our own genius and then paying it forward. I think that's so important too, is leading from a place of love and service is crucial, especially during these times.
Well, and not only that, but we're in the process of creating a new world.
Yeah.
And this new world that we're creating comes entirely from the heart.
Yes.
And it comes entirely from wanting to be of service to humanity. So let everything we do be about love.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. Before you all head out, if anyone wants help with processing that story, Kelly and I were talking about that actually is one of the areas of expertise that I work with. So if you need some story processing to learn how to look at some of those really painful parts of your past through the eyes of gratitude and forgiveness and love, Check out my website at victoriareynolds.com. I have a story processing as one of the programs that I create. It's one-on-one for you, helping you work through your pain stories so that you can tell those better stories worth telling. Because as painful as they are, the really good stuff is in them. So again, and as always, and thank you, Kelly, for being here and for your beautiful presence here on camera and in my life. It's been amazing. Yeah, thank you. And for all of you out there, as always, get bold, be fearless, like Cali, and live free. Mwah.